the EGROW webinar series. This is a series which we started as the COVID was setting in. And the purpose of the series was to bring in the best scholars in the world to come and talk about issues, both which are dear to India and dear to the global economy. We were very fortunate. We have done about 225 odd webinars so far. And not only done these webinars in a routine pattern, we have had working on during the G20 presidency, new international economic order, on climate change, on women empowerment. On new international economic order, we did 11. On the other two, we were able to do 6 each before we got engulfed into other topics. And so much of committed Fridays we already have. The think tank EGROW Foundation is basically a research-based policy think tank in NCR. We were established on October 31, 2018. We're completing 6 years now. And in this 6 years, we have tried to bring in lots of contemporary research based on solid research. So we have worked on COVID, we have worked on other issues, we have worked with Niti Aayog, we have worked with the Ministry of Sports, and I must mention the prediction that we made in our studies to the Ministry of Sports that we'll get 7 medals, and you see how accurate the prediction was, but we did not know that by 100 grams our prediction will go wrong. Nevertheless, 6 plus 1 is how I would like to put it. So the think tank has been delivering on various issues, research as well as discussions. We also run a Shadow Monetary Policy Committee, and I think that Shadow Monetary Policy Committee also does a good work in providing inputs to the RBI as to what the thought process of a trade association, because we do it along with SOCHM, and we have other experts who bring in their richness of thoughts. It is in this very context of looking at contemporary issues. For the last few years, we have been struggling with what is going on, because Punjab is quite close to Delhi and many things have happened on Punjab. One worry was, why is the growth rate in Punjab declining so rapidly? It is then that we thought that within the same country, if we have to look for success models, should we not look at other states? Or should we always keep speaking about what is happening in Europe, what's happening in America, Australia, UK, Canada? Maybe there is so much to learn within the country. And so we started exploring, and I feel so much full of gratitude that the learnings from within the states, within our country, is so rich and has been appreciated by one and all who have had the privilege to sit through these webinars. We have already done on Karnataka, we have done on Tamil Nadu and Telangana. We have done on Haryana, but we have not released it because of the elections. We will release it as the elections are over. And today we are doing on Gujarat. We initially planned we'll do only these 5 states, which are very successful. But then there's been lots of requests that we should also do Kerala. Kerala has done exceedingly well on socioeconomics. So November 1, we are doing Kerala. Then we have to do Maharashtra, quite a bit of industrialization. We want to do one in Northeast. We have yet to decide. And of course, the request has come to do one Bihar and another one Jharkhand. That way, within our own country, there'll be lessons to learn what to do and what not to do. Today's webinar is exactly on the same lines. Gujarat has done exceedingly well, and to discuss the mantras of Gujarat so that we learn from each other what have been the success points that other states need to imitate or replicate, we invited Professor Dholakia, As you know, Professor Dholakia is a well-known economist in our country. He has been on the RBI chair at IIM Ahmedabad. Let me formally share his short, brief bio in a minute. And then we requested him to chair the session. And then we decided to invite Dr. Sunil Parekh on the advice of Professor Dholakia and Professor Tushaar Shah, again as advised by Professor Dholakia. Let me now briefly share the brief bio with you before I hand over the session to Professor Dholakia. Professor Dholakia was the economic area faculty at IIM Ahmedabad for a long time, from 85 to 2018. He received the most distinguished faculty award for the year 2017-18 at IIM. He has about 41 years of experience in teaching economics, and he has been making significant contribution in policy making. The most important thing, he has been on the Monetary Policy Committee of the Reserve Bank of India. He is now on the board of work on various issues like inflation is also very sterling and quite quoted. He has been member of number of committees on different issues, including the Debt Management Committee and the State Public Finance Reform Committee, and appointed by the government of Gujarat. He chaired a committee on financial sector statistics and is currently chairing a committee on subnational accounts appointed by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. He has also played a significant role in computation of district level GDP. I was visiting UP recently and they were telling me they're using Professor Dholakia's analysis and recommendations in computing that. So he has made significant contributions in policy making in our country. Our next speaker for the day is going to be in the panel, Dr. Sunil Parekh. He is currently Senior Strategy Advisor on two Indian MNCs, Zydus Cadila Healthcare Group and Jubilant Bhartiya Group. He is also on the board of Government GNFC Limited, GVFL Limited. He has 42 years of working experience with corporates in India, Africa, and the United States. He is an empaneled arbitrator and fellow of the Indian Council of Arbitration, ICA. He is also the Indian co-chair of the Tech Exchange Initiative under the Indo-UK Partnership Program for Exchange of Startups. He is deeply involved with Gujarat's startup ecosystem and has actively supported DST program, Inspire. Dr. Parekh is on the board Senate of several universities, including IIT, Gandhinagar IIT, and on industry bodies, including FICCI National Executive, Gujarat Chamber of Commerce, and is also associated with global organizations like World Economic Forum, Geneva's Global Shapers Initiative, and the Value Week Geneva. Dr. Tushaar Shah is an economist, water energy policy researcher, and public policy specialist, is an emeritus scientist of the International Water Management Institute, Colombo, and professor emeritus of the Institute of Rural Management, Anand. Over the past 40 years, Professor Shah's main interests have been in two fields: farmer organizations and water institutions and policy. In both these fields, he has published extensively, and his writings have helped shape national debate and public policies. The research he published on water markets generated wide interest in India and abroad, and water markets soon emerged as a distinct field of study in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and China. His policy research on groundwater governance won Shah Consultative Group of International Agricultural Research Outstanding Scientist Award in 2002, UN Water for Life Award for best practices on water management research in 2014 and Distinguished Associate Award of International Association of Hydrogeologists in 2018. For over a decade, Professor Shah has been a regular invitee to the annual pre-budget consultations with the Union Finance Minister in the field of agriculture and rural development. In 2019, Professor Shah was invited to brainstorm with the Prime Minister and Niti Ayog, along with 40 economists, industrialists, and thought leaders on economic policy, the road ahead for NDA 2. I think, Dr. Shah, I was in that meeting along with you. So, with this brief introduction of the speaker, can I now request Professor Dholakia to take over the proceedings, and all yours, sir. We look forward to your thoughts. Thank you.
Ravi, you are on mute. Ravi, you are on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Yes. Now I am unmuted. So
Yes.
thank you, Dr. Charan Singh. It's a pleasure to be a participant in this kind of webinar. I have done it in the past also. Now, without wasting any more time, I would rather like to give you the structure of this entire thing. We propose to continue for about 50 to 60 minutes for making individual presentations. I'll continue for 15 to 17 minutes. Then I'll request Dr. Sunil Parekh to talk about the industry and services part of the developments in the state. I would be talking about the macroeconomic aspects and growth, etc. And then I'll request Professor Tushaar Shah to talk about agriculture, primary sector, and some of the social sectors if he wants to cover. I think these are the kind of things which we would rather like to present, and then wait for the interaction and questions from the audience. So I propose that our presentations, etc., will take about another 20 minutes or so we spare for the discussions and the question answers. Now, having said that, let me just straight away go to the broad introductory kind of thing, because when we're talking about the state experience, one needs to know a little bit more about the state and the context. Well, Gujarat is a middle-sized state. It is neither too large nor too small. Geographic area is about 1.96 lakh square kilometers, which is about 6% of the country. In terms of population, it has about 5% of the national population, and it is about 10th largest in terms of population in the country. However, in terms of the real output, by real output I mean the gross state domestic product, GSDP, as it is called. In terms of the real output at constant prices, its contribution is about 9.1% to the national GDP, 9.1%. And it is the second largest economy in the country after Maharashtra. Maharashtra is the largest economy. Gujarat is the second largest economy in the country. And incidentally, it is very interesting to know that in terms of the purchasing power parity, the Gujarat economy is about to cross, if it has not already crossed, the 1 trillion mark. So it is one of the two state economies in the country which is $1 trillion or more in terms of purchase power parity. This is something. However, in terms of the nominal GDP, GSDP, the nominal GSDP, the state ranks fifth largest. In that it is the fifth largest economy. So the inflation rate in Gujarat, measured in terms of the GSDP deflator. Now, you know, inflation is generally measured either in terms of WPI or CPI, but the GSDP deflators are the most exhaustive and appropriate kind of the thing, comprehensive measure of inflation. In terms of the GSDP deflator, its inflation rate is only 3.8% per annum for over last 12 years, as against 4.5% per annum for the country as a whole. That means it is one of the states with the lowest inflation rate that we have seen over the last 12 years. In terms of urbanization, it is about 43% of the population, as against 31% for India in terms of 2011 census. Net area sown is about 53% of the total geographical area, and cropping intensity is very low at just 1.16 in the state. The forest cover is also very low, around 8%. The average size of operational holding is, however, larger. It is about 1.88 hectares, average size of operational holding. However, there is a highest number of factories, even higher than Maharashtra. Highest number of factories in the state, and per capita industrial electricity consumption is among the highest in the country, about 850 megawatts. Highest number of establishment, this is another important thing, highest number of establishments and employment as per the sixth economic census. When you consider the establishments, etc., it has the highest number of establishments of employment per lakh of population. This is also very significant. Similarly, bank branches per lakh of population in Gujarat is higher than the country, though the credit deposit ratio is lower. This is very significant. I think among the large economies and better off economies, among those states which has a lower credit deposit ratio than the country as a whole, that implies that Gujarat is a net supplier of bank credit. I think this is also an important thing. It is also better performer in public finance. This is something which is very relevant. In terms of the own taxes, as a proportion of the total revenue receipts, it is about 65%. That means that whatever is the transfers received from the state, more than double is what you collect by way of your own taxes. Therefore, the financial autonomy is significant in the state. This is very significant because, you know, because Charan was telling me that what distinguishes and what should be lying at the root of the better performance. This is one very important aspect, that it has a financial autonomy in the sense that the own tax revenue receipts are significantly higher at around 65% as against the country average of 46%. This is something which is important. Similarly, development expenditures are about 66% of the total expenditures, which is again a very high thing. And the fiscal deficit to GSDP ratio is one of the lowest. It is about 1.6%. That means fiscally very highly disciplined state. Its debt GSDP ratio is less than 20% against the national average of about 26%. That means that in terms of public finance indicators and other things, Gujarat has been doing very well. And these are some of the things that fiscally it is a very disciplined state. It also has higher urbanization. It also has the net supplier of the bank credit, etc. Now let us come quickly to the Gujarat growth performance over the 60 years. I'm talking about 60 years because I have taken the data from 1960, when on the 1st May 1960, Gujarat was separated from the Bombay state and became a separate state. At that time, it only contributed 5.8% to the national GDP. By now, it is 9.1%. That means that its contribution has gone up almost consistently from 5.1 to something like, 5.8 to something like 9.1. Per capita GSDP in the state is right now 63% more, higher than the national average. This was another interesting statistic. As far as the Gujarat growth has been concerned, it has been higher than the national average during all the 5 growth phases. I have separated out, there is no time here for me to dwell into that, but there are 5 different phases of economic, and in all of them, since 1960, all the 5 of them, the state growth has been more than the national growth. Not only that, but over the entire period of 60 years, the growth rate has been accelerating from phase 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. That means it has been a non-stop kind of acceleration, and it's a consistent acceleration. What is most relevant is, which has not been emphasized in the literature, but I would rather like to point out this, that the strategy of the state, what is emphasized in the literature is that the Gujarat on the secondary sector or the industries, and from nowhere, it was only, for instance, contributing 18%. When the Gujarat state was separated out, industry's contribution was only 18% to the total state economy. By now it is 46%. And you can see this is the only state which has practically close to 50% contribution by the secondary sector. This has not happened in any other state. This is something which is significant. But what is relevant is that when we separated out, it was a predominantly agricultural economy, contributing something like 52% of the income. Agriculture contributed 52% of the income in the 1960s. By now, its income contribution has fallen to something like 18%. So that means that there are significant structural changes that has taken place. From predominantly agricultural economy in 1960s, it has converted its predominantly industrial economy by 2020. What is relevant is that this productivity enhancing shift in the rest has led to a significant increase in the growth rate and also the acceleration over time. What is most relevant, not I think emphasized in the literature enough, is that Gujarat concentrated on stability of the growth path. This has never ever been emphasized in the literature. This has happened over the entire period of 60 years. From 1960 to 2020, we find that the stability as measured by the movement along the path, the trend line, the deviations along the trend line, you find that there has been a significant decline in the variation growth path. That means that the stability has improved over the period from decade to decade. This has happened. This is very, very important matter, because if the growth is high and if it is with high stability, it means that high returns and low risk. If the growth is high, but there is also very wide fluctuation, then it is high returns with high risk. If the growth is low with low variability, then it means low returns with low risk. And if it is low growth with high variability, which is the worst thing, which means that the low returns with high risk. I think we have been an economy very significantly marching towards the high return, low thing over a period of 60 years. This is something very relevant. Another very great contributory factor is for the performance that Gujarat is the most open economy among all state economies in the country. The contribution of exports in 2013-14 was estimated around 55% of the GSDP, 55%. And it was not only confined to the industry or services, it was also in agriculture. So whatever we were producing, we were basically targeting the international markets, and therefore necessarily it was more in terms of efficiency and productivity. Over the period when the global environment changed, I think by now the exports contribute about 35% of the GSDP. However, what is important is that these exports are to the international destinations. If we consider the domestic destination, then it only means that when the global economies become more restrictive in terms of trade and more protective, I think we have shifted, because we had already got the advantage, competitive advantage and the comparative advantage. Therefore, we shifted from the international trade to the intranational trade, which implies that basically we continue to export out of the state, but now to the other states. These are the kind of things which are very, very significant. Another thing to understand this is that about rural urban areas, not many estimates are available. I have made special efforts to do that. And what I am finding is that in terms of the rural to urban shift of resources, Gujarat has performed extremely well. Gujarat's urban area constitute about 43% in population, as I have said earlier, 39% in terms of workers, and 59% in GSDP. Urban areas in Gujarat constitute this much, as against the national averages of only 31% of the population, 29% only of the workers, and 49% in terms of the income. I think that is also something which we have been able to garner very significantly. And this is the type of things. What is relevant is that in terms of the welfare indicators, I would say poverty rate is among the lowest, about 5%. Unemployment rate is also among the lowest. It is over 3%. Here, one has to understand and one has to recognize that unemployment is lower in spite of the fact that we receive one of the highest in migration in the country. Not the highest, but one of the highest in migration in the country. It is not an out-migration economy, it is an in-migration economy. We are receiving the migrants. And in spite of that, our unemployment rate is one of the lowest. Inequality in the consumption of the masses is among the lowest in the comparable states in the country. Similarly, there is a high rate of in-migration, as I have said. Inflation is among the lowest in the country. In terms of this data is now available. And what is important is crime rates are also among the lowest in the country. I think if I say that if the if the if the development and growth and everything is presenting such a rosy picture, one needs to understand and appreciate the unemployment rate is lower, not because there is a high public sector employment. In fact, in terms of public sector employment, Gujarat is ranking among the lowest. What is important is that it is the private sector which is taking up the things. It is the establishments and it is the factory sector which is now generating much more employment, and therefore you find that it is not the question of depending too much on the government, but not depending on the government is the culture. I think it is the basic thing is that we find that it is the private sector initiative which has made this progress possible. What is significantly concerning is the social sectors, namely the education and health. Our indicators are not very encouraging. We are lagging behind in terms of this, though we are better off as compared to the national average. But that is no consolation. We need to do much more in terms of education and health, because that is the future. And I think the future needs to be protected in terms of better health and education facilities. Thank you very much. And I welcome Dr. Sunil Parekh to make his presentation.
Can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me? Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Charan Singh. It is a pleasure. And you have an illustrious career, and I wanted to personally congratulate you on this initiative that you have taken of learning from each other rather than from abroad. And my story is no different. I am also learning from Professor Dholakia in India rather than an economist from abroad. So thank you very much. My career in research started with Ravindra Dholakia, and I once again want to acknowledge publicly that Ravindra bhai, you have been a great contributor and a teacher to help me go from industry into research over the last 30 years. So thank you. Tushaar, it's a pleasure to share this dais with you. We are on several boards together, and I thank once again Charanjit Singh to bring us all together. My point is about industry, and my job has been made easier by Ravi by explaining that the backbone of the entire economic transformation that has taken place has been the industrial side. And it's a good story. So like him, I would like to spend a minute or two on, historically speaking, of what has been the story of Gujarat in terms of going backward. Gujarat has been quite prosperous, and the secret of prosperity was essentially because of its trade and commerce. In short, it was very good in doing dhanda. Coupled with financial acumen and the added boost of a large coastline for external trade, Gujarat has fared well since the beginning. And when I read the history for this particular session today, I found that even in the Dholavira Hadappan period, archaeologists have found items which have been traded and symbols of weights and measures and of goods made in Kutch that were found in Sumer, in Babylon, in Rome, and the neighboring geographies about 2000 to 2500 BC. Now, I don't know whether the Gujarati of today is part of the Dravidians or was it part of the people who were living there. But geographically, we are now inheritors of this area. The Lothal port presented an emporium of global goods, followed by the port Khambat at Bharuch, right up to the time that the British came. And I have read about several cases where people like Virji Vora, Abdul Ghaffar, and the Shroffs and Shantidas Javeri, who have from time to time had financed and bailed out the Sultanate in Delhi during the time of Aurangzeb when they ran short of money. And I think they also were involved in special financing of building new cities across the empire at that time. Yes, I agree with Ravi bhai. Gujarat's GDP today stands roughly at $330 billion, accounting for 9.5% of national wealth, while having a population of 5% and a land area of 6%. In my view, on an average, it has grown at the rate of about 12% in the last 2 decades in nominal terms, and between 7 and 7.5% in real terms. And Gujarat is aiming to become $500 billion economy by the year 2026, but I feel we will actually achieve this only by 2027. Fortunately, we have a roadmap, Charanjit Singh, that, for Gujarat, that helps us and acts like a beacon in terms of how do we achieve our goals. Historically, the principal crops that have grown Gujarat's prosperity have been cotton, and which was available in very large quantities earlier. The other items of interest were indigo, ceramics, millets, shipping services, especially the one that I mentioned at Lothal and Bharuch. And in 1947, India got independence, and in 1960, the Greater Bombay Presidency split into two states, Gujarat and Maharashtra, due to the untiring effort of many, including Shri Indulal Yagnik, seeking self-determination through linguistic state creation. The predominant business community, even in Mumbai, have been Gujarati businessmen. Maharashtra has had a large share of industry at the time of the split. But the advantage that the Gujarati businessmen had was that they knew the trades, they knew the markets, they knew the customers, and they knew the transport routes. And it was very easy for them to actually start developing Gujarat between 1940s and 1960s. And by 1960, when the split took place, Gujarat already had about 100 textile mills, and Ahmedabad, which was then known as the Manchester of the East. The third point I want to talk about today is which were the other sectors that have driven Gujarat's economy. So the first industrial development took place on a large scale was the cotton textile mill based on its own cotton production, earning it the name of Manchester. Subsequently, Gujarat found oil in a place called Koyali, and the petroleum and downstream oil industry was discovered in the 1960s. And this led to the development of petrochemicals and subsequently to all the organic chemicals, especially solvents and several very basic foundational organic chemicals like benzenes and others. Then came the public sector undertaking investments by government in fertilizer manufacturing, which is Gujarat State Fertilizer Corporation, Gujarat Narmada Corporation, and Gujarat Alkali Corporation, all based on the local production of petrochemicals. And that led to the development and opened the way for pharmaceuticals, the active pharmaceutical industry, APIs, dyes and intermediates where the customers were based within Gujarat, and a lot of other attendant industrial sectors. Then because of the local limestone, the cement industry also cropped up in places where the deposits were there, and energy projects started using local lignite and coal. And there are 12 sectors today, friends, where Gujarat produces over 10% of national production, with seven sectors contributing more than 15% of national production from within the state boundaries. And these are chemicals, which produces roughly about a quarter of all of India's chemicals together, petroleum products, which is about 1/6 of all the petroleum products, pharmaceuticals, which is about 1/5, that is 20% of all India pharmaceutical production, textiles, which is between 11 and 12% of national production. And then you have sectors like mining, which is both metallic and non-metallic, machinery manufacturing, cement industry, iron ore, and fertilizer. Gujarat polishes over 80% of all the diamonds of the world when you look at that in the numbers, in physical quantity numbers, not in value. And has emerged over the last 20-30 years as a leader in gems and jewelry as well, besides polishing of diamonds. Gujarat produces over 75% of all the salt in India because of its large coastline, and several sodium and sodium hydroxide and potash industry have developed near Mithapur and in other places based on the salt that is produced in the state. The agro processing side also, and I'm sure Tushaar will have a lot to say on this, but I will talk only about the agro processing side. We are, as you know, we grow rice, we grow wheat, and a wide variety of very healthy millets in the Saurashtra Kathiawad areas, and supported by various crops, horticulture, vegetables, and fisheries in the Saurashtra area with the vast coastline. The fish exports have crossed $1 billion just last year. Besides these cash crops, Gujarat is very big in groundnut and groundnut oil, cotton and cotton textiles, fennel seeds, fruits, castor oil, and of course isabgul, which is found in every pizza that we eat in India today. Gujarat is also very big in guar gum. Now, Gujarat has a very significant portion of share of castor in produced, which is Gujarat, which is about 70% of national production. And we make about 100 value-added products from castor oil, which are used in space application for lubricants. We use castor in the preservatives, and we have about 90 to 100 additional products made from castor, and it has emerged as one of the very important export items from there. The other area of isabgol, we produce about 70% of the world's production of castor, of isabgol in India today, and we are exporting also quite a lot of it after preliminary processing. The other big story in Gujarat about industry and industrial development or economic development is linked to the famous milk cooperative called Amul, which gave birth to the rural prosperity like no other sector in Gujarat. Today, it is a pleasure to tell you that Amul, I have found, is competing in the US supermarkets in San Francisco and Texas with over 50 world-class processed products of its own. This industry has really come home to really, be one of the major factors of contribution in Gujarat. The period 2000 to now, which is about 25 years, the period that Dr. Charan Singh had asked me to look at specifically, other than looking at the big story. And these are the actual figures of investments on the ground that I have to report. Investments in the year 2000 were 68,000 crores in industry, which increased to 2.4 lakhs, a fourfold growth in 2010. And that 2.4 lakhs grew to 7.5 lakhs in 2021. Now, this by any measure, that from independence of 1960 to 2000, we had 68,000 crores. And from the year of 2000 to 2010, we got 4 times the total amount of investment that we had achieved from the time that the state became independent in just 10 years. And this period of 2000 to 2021-22 has been a meteoric rise. The industrial turnover, which was just 1 lakh crores in the year 2000, became sixfold, 6.2 lakh crores in 2010. And 3 years ago, it was 16 lakh crores in 2021. This period has been accompanied by a marked good market condition, barring the COVID period, and extensive birth and growth in the acceleration of the entrepreneurial behavior and entrepreneurial activities in the state. A word about the policy. Context was that in the year 1995 to 2000, Government of India put a ban on all industrial policies that gave incentives and tax breaks to industries that impoverished the finances of the state. Ravi, you will remember, that this actually was the only way that industries were able to attract, and you wrote a paper also sometime about the reforms and the tax policy and its impact on the states. And that was the paper I really enjoyed reading. And, so therefore states were lost because they needed a new approach of how to attract industries without giving fiscal benefits and without ruining their long-term finances by giving tax breaks. So basically what Gujarat did at that time, it focused on infrastructure development. And it went headlong into several industrial development. And I have a list of items that they had done in order to bring and make this a reality in the terms of better roads, electricity, water, ready title cleared, land banks were made available, developed plug and play industrial estates were created, gas pipelines were laid, effluent treatment plants were done, started solid waste landfill sites and deep sea discharge pipelines after treatment of water, effectively giving a competitive advantage in the costs of production at the factory level, and then easing of transportation, warehousing and storage facility with cheaper ways to export goods through efficient ports. So this was a story that actually brought Gujarat in as a major manufacturer of goods, and the industrial production went up from a mere 16 to 18% in 1960, right up to 45, 47, 48% by the year 21-22. Similarly, several simultaneous policies were announced. For example, Gujarat is number 1 in the country for solar rooftop policy. The number of houses that have got rooftop solar panels is the highest in the country. And roughly they say that this is about 11% of domestic households, which is by any conceivable standard anywhere in Asia or the world. It is a state with the largest per capita solar rooftop, and it is growing exponentially. Gujarat was the first one to develop the startup policy, and I was happy and fortunate to be one of the founding members of the startup policy in Gujarat in 2012 and 13, which was so successful. Then when our Chief Minister went as Prime Minister, we were asked to go to Delhi and present it, and that led to the development of the startup policy in India and the stand-up policy, which was a great thought by our Prime Minister to not to forget the rural areas of entrepreneurship development. Gujarat offers special R&D funds for research, marketing of products locally, as well as when you go abroad. And it gives a relocation support for industries after COVID who want to come back to India after they have faced problems abroad. We get rebates on patent filing, both nationally and internationally. And friends, you remember, filing international patents is a very expensive proposition. And we get a very large number of amount from subsidy from the government for doing that. And we have money available for skill enhancement schemes as well. Today, there are policies for every aspect of enterprise creation, its nurture, and then even it has been made easy to wind down the project and shut it off, which was a nightmare 25 years ago. And we have today, thanks to Government of India here, with the lowest corporate tax of just 15% for new manufacturing units set up. And this is one of the lowest tax rates in the world. And we have the benefit of a unified GST tax revenue, which has led not only to a boost at the macroeconomic level of collection, but Gujarat also has emerged in being able to formalize a lot of the informal businesses that used to happen, because now the customer is demanding for tax receipt and not the tax authority. So if you want to sell your goods, you have to produce the tax receipt. And this has been a very effective measure in the formalization of the largely informal economy. The special economic zones in Gujarat, which came in 2005, have also played a very important role in boosting the kind of exports that Ravi talked about. And it has been a success story. And one of the primary reasons why Gujarat industry came to Gujarat, to my mind, was the fact that it offered a very large vendor base. It gave reliable utilities. And the government used to pay the incentives, whatever little was left of giving, on time, which was much better than many other states who are delayed in the payment of incentives, sometimes by 6 months to a year, primarily because of the healthy fiscal position that the state enjoys in being able to honor its commitment to industry at the time of setting it up. And I think industry today sees a clear growth opportunity for development if it locates in Gujarat. In 2015, furthering this momentum, Gujarat government announced several new sectors, including the defense production system, which is aimed at modernizing the defense weapon system and indigenizing it itself. Assistance for supporting Sikh industries, new garment policies, new apparel policies, new policy for plastics, for textiles, for export assistance schemes, for common environmental infrastructure, including common effluent treatment plants, new industrial infrastructure establishment and allied sector. Today, Gujarat has an online portal for all new investors. You don't have to go to any office. A facilitation agency to help navigate for clearances, hand-holding for large units, and a very supportive compliance environment. Help desks have been located in all important zones at the district level throughout the state today. The current policy also helps several other subsidies and interest subsidies, and Ravi, your paper highlighted about how when you take a loan, you get an interest subsidy, you get 20-30% capital subsidy in thrust sectors, and you get support for ICT adoption and quality certification programs. And even now, the new policy has come for dormitory housing schemes for workers working in your factory, so that the social development aspect is also done well. Gujarat has identified several sectors which are sunrise sectors, and they have significantly gone behind each of these in a very systematic way. For example, we have, as one of the only states in the country, a cinematic tourism scheme. No other state has this scheme. We have a support scheme for EVs, the cottage and the rural industry. We have a scheme for aimed primarily at the micro level for heritage tourism, a scheme for integrated logistic parks, and there are about 26 others which I don't want to read for the lack of time. But the interesting other one that I found is the hydrogen development, green hydrogen development scheme, and several supplementary schemes to support the vendors of the PLI schemes that are coming in large numbers in the state. The fourth point that I want to cover is about the development of the state has its own challenges. We've done well on the whole, but it has been in the traditional resource-based industries. And we have become very competitive on the basis of land, labor, capital, shipping, and logistics, and low energy and efficient costs. But this is only the first stage, the phase of development in the history of any state. Every state has to build further in innovation and technology, especially, as economists will tell you, if it wants to avoid the ubiquitous middle income trap. The World Development Report this year from the World Bank has highlighted how Indonesia, Malaysia, and some 80 other countries, highlighted by Inderjit Gill, the World Bank economist, have said that how, because of people not neglecting innovation and technology when they are at the peak in traditional areas, they actually cripple themselves for the medium and long term. And therefore, I think it is very important that we look at this. Overall, I think the growth in Gujarat has not created the number of jobs that it required. While the unemployment is low, the value addition and the growth in the labor figures, the labor wage figures, has been relatively less. The value addition in Gujarat is also lower in Maharashtra and Karnataka, even though it has overtaken it in total amount of investments in Gujarat, and as well as the amount of the turnover that is there. Gujarat also faces 5 major issues in environment, which is land degradation, loss of forest, water body issues, air pollution and SPM levels, extensive landfill sites. And because of the higher carbon footprint and electricity that Ravi talked about, we also have a bigger challenge to green our entire carbon footprint in the state. And I think Gujarat has never been very good in FDIs. We have never crossed 4th or 5th rank in India. And there is a study which requires some significant attention, because we are not able to attract FDI like other states, even though we are very competitive. And the last item in this area is, I think it is very important that all our infrastructure which is built today is based on sufficiency. And we have to move our benchmarks from sufficiency to efficiency. How am I doing on time? Should I shut up now or should I continue for 5 minutes?
No, please sum up.
Okay. So I think going forward, there are challenges. For example, the service industry in Gujarat is lagging behind. For example, Gujarat lagged behind in Maharashtra in theatre and performing arts, in music, in design, in fashion, in publishing, in film, in literature, TV and radio and media. Hospitality is another sector where Gujarati boys and girls do not want to take jobs. So we have to get labor from outside for developing this entire thing. On the startup system, we are extremely entrepreneurial, but one question that keeps bugging me is that why don't we have a single unicorn from Gujarat in the startup arena out of the 108 unicorns that exist today, in spite of having such a large entrepreneurial opportunity in the country. I want to conclude by saying that government policy and governance have been a major factor in the development of Gujarat. It's a combination of the entrepreneurial energy of the state as well as the policy. The Alang shipyard breaking yard was one area where the government intervened and have brought the entire global industry of shipbreaking into India. The auto industry was attracted when Mr. Modi talked about bringing the Tata from West Bengal. Now we have Ford, we have Maruti, and we have 300 vendors. And now we have 150,000 crore worth of investments by multinationals, Micron, CG Power, and Tata in semiconductors, which are all located in Gujarat, whose factories are under construction. The evolution of policy has taken place in Gujarat in a significant way. And I think when I reflect back, I find that this story is very inspiring. It's a very credible tale of Gujarat's economic and industrial development. And it shows that profit can coexist with planet and people, and culture can coexist with commerce. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunil. As usual, it is very comprehensive and very thorough. Thank you very much. Equally comprehensive and presentation is expected from Tushaar, and I am sure he is going to do justice to the topic. Tushaar.
Thank you, Ravindra. Thank you, Sunil Bhai. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Charan Singh. Well, as Ravindra mentioned, until 1990s, Gujarat was a predominantly agricultural economy. But actually, we went a very good agricultural economy because the agricultural growth, and normally in agricultural economy, it's very hard to exceed a growth rate of 3.5, and 4%. I mean, most states who were around that, and Gujarat was no different. In the heydays of Green Revolution, it was Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, which are basically the exemplars of rapid agricultural growth. And Gujarat was never in that particular story. But in the early years of the new millennium, Gujarat agriculture experienced a big spurt in its agricultural economy. And I think that the most important reason was that we got an excellent agriculture minister. Um, Mr. Modi, as chief minister, actually devoted more attention to agriculture than chief ministers normally do, and his approach to agricultural growth was very different from that of many other chief ministers. He looked at farmers as partners in growth and looked at agriculture from the economic point of view, then from the point of view of cultivating a large vote bank, as many other chief ministers have done. So during the first 10 decade or 15 years of the new millennium, Gujarat executed several reforms which actually pitchforked its agricultural growth rate to unprecedented levels. Actually, between 2000 and 2015, Gujarat's agricultural GSDP grew at a rate of, not agricultural GSDP, but the agricultural value of output grew at a rate of 9.5 to 9.75%. Since then, it has slipped a bit, but I think based on the primarily living off the changes that were made during those early years, Gujarat's agricultural economy has continued to do well. Uh, I think one of the most important drivers of agricultural growth in Gujarat since 2000 has really been some extraordinary work done on the water side. Even before 2000, the agricultural economy was dominated by the dynamism of South Gujarat, which has always been water abundant. There's more rainfall. It also has large areas under canal irrigation. Right from the 1950s and even earlier, there were cotton cooperatives and sugar cooperatives which kind of dynamized the agricultural economy of South Gujarat. But if you look at Saurashtra and North Gujarat, which were always semi-arid and highly drought-prone, they were always a drag on the agricultural economy of Gujarat. In fact, Saurashtra region was known for frequent droughts, and most droughts turned into famines, causing large-scale fatality of humans as well as livestock. But during the 1990s, there was, a spontaneous mass movement uh, on on catching rainfall and dispatching it to the aquifers. This started in Saurashtra and then spread to eastern Gujarat and then to North Gujarat. And actually, that had the government had no role in this until 1998, when Keshubai's government recognized the importance of this public of this people's movement for groundwater recharge, and something like several 100,000 local check dams and water harvesting structures were built primarily through voluntary effort by farmers as well as other citizens, and philanthropic capital supplied by diamond merchants in Surat and Belgium and local cement factories who provided some capital. Um, Actually, it's probably no more than 700-800 crore were invested in this recharge movement. Compare that to 80,000 crores that we have already spent in Sardar Sarovar project. But the amount of good that this did to improve water security in Saurashtra and North Gujarat was probably way more than the dividends that we reaped from the Sardar Sarovar project. Um, Keshubai's government, but more importantly, Mr. Modi, when he became the chief minister, he actually uh, not only co-opted this movement, but created a regime in which village communities could get government support to do this water harvesting work on a more systematic basis. So actually 7 or 8 years, early years of Mr. Modi's government, I think harvested this local initiative and enthusiasm for water harvesting to create a level of water security that Gujarat had never seen before. And this turned around Saurashtra and North Gujarat, which actually energized Gujarat's agricultural rally. Between 2000 and 2015, if Gujarat was able to achieve such a high rate of agricultural growth, there was very little contribution from South Gujarat. It was mostly driven by the newfound agricultural dynamism in Saurashtra and North Gujarat. The other major intervention that actually contributed to this agricultural rally in Saurashtra and North Gujarat, as Sunil Bhai mentioned, was the dairy cooperatives. Until 2000, Amul and the National Dairy Development Board had thought that only southern and northern Gujarat districts were suitable for the development of dairy cooperatives. There were hardly any dairy cooperatives in Saurashtra and Kutch region. But there were several government dairies which are virtually non-functional in Saurashtra and Kutch. And what Mr. Modi did was to hand over all those dairies to the NDDB to set up new generation cooperatives. And when these new generation dairy cooperatives, which are organized like farmers' joint stock companies, when they began doing well and procuring large quantity of milk, Amul also went in. So for nearly 10 years, there was intense competition among the Amul type cooperatives and the new generation dairy cooperatives, which actually did remarkably well for the farmers because they offered very good price. They created milk procurement structures virtually overnight, which made it very easy for farmers to market their surplus milk. They also organized campaigns to get good cattle and buffaloes in those regions. And therefore, Kutch and Saurashtra actually added nearly a quarter of the total organized sector dairy milk procurement in that particular decade, and that led to major, development of dairying as a major livelihood option for farmers in Saurashtra and Kutch. And today, if you see, Saurashtra and Kutch have very dynamic dairy cooperatives, both new generation types as well as Amul types, and actually they become a major force for the growth of organized rearing in Gujarat. The third major change that took place was the rise of BT cotton. I think the Modi government constantly worked to make sure that farmers in Gujarat got certified seeds, and they were spared the travels of the fake seeds, and they made sure that Gujarat farmers got good quality BT cotton seed at a reasonable price. And therefore, BT cotton took off in Gujarat like it did nowhere else. And actually, there were years when Gujarat had the highest production of BT cotton. So if you compare BT cotton in economy of Gujarat versus Maharashtra has always been forerunner in cotton cultivation in India. But during the new millennium, Gujarat has taken over, and that is primarily because a lot of the BT cotton in Maharashtra was in rain-fed areas, and BT cotton everywhere has succeeded much better in irrigating. In Gujarat, nearly 100% of BT cotton was grown under irrigated condition. So water security was a very important part of Gujarat's agricultural growth. So recharge movement, Sardar Sarovar was in the making at that time, and it has started really yielding dividends only now that its waters have reached Kutch and Saurashtra, and we expect another major rally in Gujarat's agricultural growth because of the full benefits of Sardar Sarovar. I think when I say that Mr. Modi became a agriculture minister par excellence, I think his major focus was on bringing agricultural research. He increased collaboration between Gujarat and Israel on agricultural front. He always quoted top agricultural scientists like Dr. M.S. Swaminathan. He used to invite Dr. Swaminathan and he would present his own vision of agricultural change that he wanted to see in Gujarat. So, and he got and harvested ideas from top scientists to give a fillip to Gujarat's agriculture. One major important way in which his agricultural strategy differed from that of many other states was that he never gave much credence to giveaways. For example, many states have ruined their groundwater resources by giving free power. So both the water economy as well as the energy economy has taken a big knock because states like Punjab, Telangana, they have been giving free power to farmers. What Mr. Modi did, he moved in the reverse direction. In 2000, he basically among the first things that he did was that there would be no tube well which would not be metered. So he was the only chief minister, only state. Gujarat became the only state other than West Bengal where all the tube wells have been metered, and this is reined in power subsidy. This is reined in groundwater overdraft. Also between 2003 and 2006, in a pioneering move, Gujarat separated agricultural feeders from the other rural feeders. The objective was to improve the quality of power supply to villages and to homes, while at the same time putting a cap on the overall groundwater draft and energy subsidies. So I think this is actually we'd expected that farmers would resist this move to ration power supply to agriculture. But along with power rationing, Gujarat also improved the quality of power that was supplied to farmers. And surveys that we did showed that farmers were quite happy with this ration, but much better quality power supply. Now, this is accounted for the fact that Gujarat's discoms are the only discoms which are today profitable in the whole country. So it's reduced the subsidy burden on the discoms, while at the same time it put the groundwater overdraft on a leash. So the restrictions on power supply, free power supply to farmers, and the investment in decentralized groundwater recharge have meant that in spite of an agricultural economy on steroid, Gujarat is the only state today where the groundwater tables are not dropping during summer. It's the only state where groundwater situation is safe in most parts of the state. But if you look at most other states, groundwater depletion and overdraft has emerged as a major crisis, and most states are finding it hard to bring groundwater depletion under control when at the same time you're providing farmers free power. So emphasis on agricultural research, emphasis on constructive science-based interventions in agricultural development, treating farmers as partners in development rather than as supplicants who just leave off the subsidy on inputs. I think these have been among the hallmarks of Gujarat's agricultural strategy. I must say that since he moved to Delhi, there has been a certain amount of stagnancy in agricultural development. And what 6, 7, 8% growth we've been able to get in the agriculture sector is still basically living off the several reforms that Agriculture Minister Narendra Modi implemented in Gujarat during the first 13, 14 years of his regime in Gujarat. And I think that Gujarat is now ready for another round of reforms. We need to do with the large irrigation projects that we have got. Gujarat has got state level water security of the highest kind. It has never experienced in the new millennium. Gujarat has never experienced the kind of water stress that we often used to face during the earlier millennium, when every drought meant water trains to Rajkot and many cities, and drinking water would be a crisis. But we no longer see that kind of a crisis in Gujarat. Nor are farmers stressed for water because the access to irrigation has increased to a great extent. So Gujarat has a very high level of water security, but still we need to radically improve the way our water infrastructure functions. Narmada main canal and reservoir are functioning very well, but there are issues to be tackled when at the last mile water delivery. The same issues we face in the new Sauni scheme that is taking water wholesale to many dams in Saurashtra, but again taking that water from the dams to farmers still remains a major area where more work needs to be done. Agricultural research, I think, with the unbundling of agricultural university in early 2000s, the agricultural research system in Gujarat became more dynamic than it ever was. And I think these universities need to do more to contribute to quantum jump in agricultural productivity in Gujarat. So whereas I think Gujarat has had a good run in the agricultural economy in the last 20 to 22 years, I think it is ready for a new phase of reform when the enterprise of the farmers and an intelligent government support can actually help the state to achieve new heights. Thank you.
Thank you, Tushar. As expected, it was it was a very comprehensive rundown on and the entire fundamental path of agriculture, agricultural sector, and related sectors like power, etc. In Gujarat, it was excellent. Now, I think we would open the entire thing for question answers, and I'll request Charan Singh to coordinate the question answers. You just see what questions you are getting from the audience. You can ask the questions, and one of us will answer.
I just wanted to actually, very impressed with the type of presentations that have been made. But let me ask you a question on rural model of growth. I wasn't very sure while I was at IIM Bangalore. The rural model of Mr. Modi was quite popular and discussed. So if any one of you wants to speak on that. The other thing is the political economy of reforms. As I just saw it, especially in Professor Tushaar's presentation, I saw the support given by the government in agricultural reforms was really playing a very significant role. Even in the presentation by Dr. Parekh, where he mentioned that government support and the people's passion, entrepreneurship really came together to yield the type of results and growth that we have seen in Gujarat. So, would any one of you would like to speak on the issue of political economy playing a significant role on the growth path?
Sunil, would you like to answer?
Yeah, I just want a clarification on the question. When you say critical sectors, critical economy, what do you have in mind?
What I'm making is the political economy.
Oh, political economy. Yeah, I think Gujarat has enjoyed stability and instability. I remember there was a time when we had about 4 chief ministers in 2 years. And that was a period was, it clearly showed its impact on the figures of economic growth during that period. But when you take the decade as a whole, it is well covered up because of the excellent growth that industry and overall economy grew. But political stability is such a fundamental value. It is not accounted for in any, strategy that we have of economic development. And yet it plays one of the major roles in terms of seeing the advances of the schemes that have been announced and seeing it to fruition. I think I believe that the developmental cycle in industrial growth and in economic growth is a 10 to 12-year-old cycle. If you want to make a change in Punjab today, Charanji, I feel that it will take you at least a decade and a decade plus to drive that change. Now, if during that period, if you find that there are 2 or 3 chief ministers and 2 or 3, people with different views as ministers of agriculture or industries, then it loses its momentum. You just don't get the momentum to actually see it through and cover it. So what we have benefited in Gujarat has been a long, steady 25 years of constant regime with one kind of philosophy, and that one philosophy that was touched upon by Tushar and by Ravi was that government of Gujarat is an extremely frugal government. They do not give doles. They charge for everything that they do. They give you concessions, but nothing is free. And therefore, there is a certain economic value for any services that people derive, even in the social sector. And I think this has helped the state's finances. It has helped them to focus on large projects. And then it has helped them to focus on. I'm sorry, I'm getting a feedback on this. Are you also getting a feedback?
Yeah.
I wonder how. Can we all close our mics so that there is no feedback from?
Yeah.
I think it will help. So I think, being a frugal government doesn't mean it's a bad government. In the long term, we have seen frugal governments actually work better, whether it is free electricity, free water, free health service, free education, free this, free that. It really helps. That is one redeeming factor. The other redeeming factor of a stable government policy is they see the shortcomings of what they have achieved and are able to then make the changes without facing the risk of criticism by somebody else. And I think this is very important because this actually changes the entire tone of the discussions in the policy making. So these are the two economic reasons why political stability has helped. Thank you.
You are muted. Ravindra, you are muted.
It's not audible, sir. Not audible. Huh.
Ravi, you are muted. Ravi, you are muted. Please open your mic. And no, not yet. He's still muted. You are still muted. You are still muted. I think someone is centrally controlling him. He's trying to, because there was noise, I think maybe.
Admin may be check. Admin.
Yeah, I think everybody is muted. Admin man has to release his speaker. Ravi,
No, we are able to unmute. Maybe
Oh.
organizer can call on mobile.
Ravi, you are still muted. Ravi, you are still. Acha, okay. He has a problem. Okay. Let's go on to the next question then. Okay.
Yeah. The other question, if you see in the chat box, there are quite a few questions. One is from Nagesha. Nagesha, do you want to articulate your question? Otherwise, I can read it for you. How do you address
sir.
the issue of?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but
Sir,
please,
let me
please.
brief it, sir. Yeah, sir. Such a very wonderful and very intensive presentation, Ravindra Dholakia, sir, and other two professors. Sir, I want to know the one latest story behind the 16th Finance Commission, where the developed states like Gujarat, Karnataka, and Maharashtra, the share to the national tax revenue is increasing, where the contribution is increasing from these states, and whereas the devolution part, these states are getting less. This is a very heart-burning issue. And Dholakia sir or someone can take this issue. What should be the argument as a public finance student? And we all know that. And some states like developed states like Karnataka and other states where they are arguing for, so we are contributing more and give it to more share. And is it how it is rational? And I want to know that. And the success stories of public sector health and education sectors of Gujarat, can somebody can highlight? So we are happy to listen to that two sectors, sir. Thank you, thank you, Charan sir, for the opportunity.
Should I request every question already, and then you can decide which one to answer and who should answer? So there is a question from Vashaspati Shukla. Despite high and sustained economic growth, why is Gujarat performing poorly compared to other states in several development indicators such as education, use of LPG, sanitation, etc.?
क्या यार मैं कब का ठीक है
Then there is another one by Vijay Kumar. He says, can industrialization be considered a major driver of high economic growth? And if so, how realistic it is to think about re-engineering the resource endowment, considered the basis for comparative advantage. Now, then Professor Ghuman is asking Professor Parekh, when you say Gujarat has not contributed to employment, but how can you say when unemployment is only 3%? So that means Gujarat is doing well on the employment scenario. There's another question from Professor Ghuman.
Yes. Now
Led to
that
the excellent, what led,
I
oh, yeah.
would rather like to say, I would rather like to say a couple of things on the previous questions. I think when somebody is saying that Gujarat government is helping out, the help that it gives is in terms of the policies. It is in terms of reducing the power shortages. It is in terms of ensuring a 24/7 kind of power to agriculture at a price. But it is availability of the quality power that is important. And it is helping the farmers in such things. If you are asking me, there is a very significant study that I had made in terms of the terms of trade between agriculture and non-agriculture. And one of the reasons why the agricultural growth in the country, I mean in the state, picked up very significantly was that the terms of trade was in favor of agriculture for a long period of time. And as a result, you found that agriculture actually, and incidentally, terms of trade in agriculture, between agriculture and non-agriculture, is not just a subject of the center, but it is largely a subject of state. That is what the recent RBI research paper has come out with. I think if you see these kind of things, you can see, for instance, one of the things that the Gujarat government did was in 1995, it was the first state to announce a port policy, and a port policy where the privatized port were allowed. And the privatization of the ports was a significant step. And this and subsequent emphasis on the building of infrastructure in terms of electricity, roads, and railways, it also implied that the cost advantage and the comparative advantage were really gained by the industries and agriculture within the state. It is not giving a subsidy per se. Coming to your another question about to Mr. Sunil Parekh, you know, Sunil said that the employment in to the desired level. That means that it is an aspirational thing. In terms of, I mean, he would also recognize that Gujarat has a very low unemployment rate in spite of very high in-migration rate. That means that there are plenty of employment opportunities, no issues at all. But the kind of investment and the kind of industries and the level at which the things are growing in Gujarat, he would expect, like I would also expect, that the employment growth will be much more than what it is turning out to be. It doesn't mean in absolute terms it is bad. No, not at all. It is very good, but it could be better. That is what it says. I think that is the thing. Coming to Nagesh's question about the Finance Commission and the 16th Finance Commission, I mean, this is a very, very, I mean, I would say very, and a very, very strong kind of an issue between the developed states and the non-developed states, between the fiscally disciplined states and fiscally non-disciplined states, that should the states which contribute more revenue, tax revenues, should also get a higher share. I don't think that we need to talk about getting exactly the same share as the contribution. That will imply that there is no redistribution. But the level of redistribution that is occurring through the finance commissions are questionable. If I am contributing something like 10% to the state, central tax revenue as a state, and I'm getting in return only 2%, then that creates the burning point. Is this 10% versus 2% a relevant thing? Or if I'm contributing 10%, at least I must get something like 5-6%, because that is my legitimate share. The whole argument as a public finance student is that when I am contributing more, it means that I'm attracting and I'm doing many more activities, economic activities within the, for which all structure and every necessary support. And if for that I'm not getting the adequate revenue, then from where am I going to provide that kind of service? That means that if I'm not getting the proper equitable share, I'm not saying equal share, but equitable share, then the question is that probably my ability to support and ability to foster the economic growth in the state will be impacted adversely. And to that extent, it will impact the growth of the nation adversely over a period of time. I think it is this law which has to be seen. I would ask Tushar or Sunil, or rather Tushar and Sunil to add whatever they want to say. Yes. Tushar, you are muted.
Yeah. On the political economy question, I wanted to make the point. Actually, this is. Am I audible? Yeah.
Yeah.
The point that I wanted to make is that as Chief Minister, Mr. Modi spent a good deal of political capital in implementing reforms in agriculture, water, energy policy that meant imparting dynamism to the economy without giving freebies. And a great example is in terms of controlling agricultural power subsidy. And I think that the decisions that Gujarat took and Gujarat government implemented were something that are direly needed in most other states, but no chief minister is able to mobilize the political energy to do that. I think one of the worst things that, from the economic point of view, that is happening in 8-9 big states in the country is the dead weight of free power. It's ruining the electricity companies. None of the 1995 discoms except 4 in Gujarat today are profitable. Many of them have such large accumulated deficit that no bank is willing to lend money to them. So this is one sector in which political courage in reform is necessary. And I think that Gujarat showed that. So today, all 1.8, 1.7, 1.8 million irrigation tubewells in Gujarat are metered, and the farmers are paying for the energy. The government came down heavily on energy theft. So the rural grid, the anarchy that you see in states like Telangana on rural feeders, you don't find that in Gujarat. So I think that that managing the political economy, especially in agriculture where large number of farmers are involved and where you have massive vote banks. So the kind of skill and courage that was needed was something that was shown in Gujarat. And I think we are reaping dividends on that. There is another question on what do we do with crop residues? Like in Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP, do our farmers burn crop residues? Now, I think Punjab, Haryana farmers burn crop residues because they fall in the rice wheat system. 90% of farmers, they grow rice as well as wheat. And the window of time available between rice, Kharif rice and Rabi wheat is so small that farmers there are tempted to burn the crop residue. In Gujarat, both rice as well as wheat areas are relatively small compared to Punjab and Haryana. And also the time gap between the two seasons is not really so Gujarat farmers do burn crop residue, but I think the scale on which this happens is much smaller in Gujarat than in northwestern states.
Sunil, if you want to say something, Ed.
No, I think I'm good. All that I was saying was that the point that you made, plus I think when we look at jobs, you look at the entire economy of the state, and industry is one part of that. There are several other places where people get jobs, and the industrial contribution to jobs in any state is relatively small compared to agriculture, compared to own establishment, compared to service industry. So industry's contribution in the chemical sector, which are inherently more automated than, for example, leather industry, or where it is labor-oriented industry, the contribution is relatively less. So I think we need to supplement the numbers by looking at the big picture and not only the industrial development as far as the employment is concerned. That was the point. Thank you.
But that is how, it is not only the number of factories that we have the highest in the country, but also number of establishments and the jobs created per lakh of population in establishments is also the highest in the country. I think that is something which is relevant.
Exactly.
Charan, any other questions?
So there is this question here on why is Gujarat not doing so well in health and education? I think it's an important question because if we have prosperity, if we have taxes, we have revenues, we have good economic growth, why is our social development indicators also not shaping up at the same speed as the economic development? I have no answer because I'm not a specialist in this, but this question has also been bugging me as to why are we not able to do better than what we are doing today? And I would love to hear an opinion of anybody in the group amongst our speakers. I'm sure, Ravi, you have an opinion, and Tushaar, you have an opinion, and Charanjit Singh, I think you will also have an opinion why an economically advanced state is not developing socially at that same commensurate pace. It's an important question.
I think my answer is that we began at a low base and we have recovered considerably. We were below the national average when we began. I think we have crossed the national average by now in health and education both. Now the question is that we are picking up. In short, these are the flows. We have to see that generally people talk about the stock estimates because this is and other things is a flow concept. When you consider the stock concept, because of the historical disadvantage, we are at a lower level. But when you consider the flow concept, I think we are doing reasonably well. And if you consider the improvement over the period of time, our rate of improvement is a satisfactory rate of improvement. When the growth starts taking place in a big way, this happens on its own. I think the whole issue is that it is a question about the government's philosophy and philosophy of the people at large, because this is a democracy. I think if you want everything to be done by the government, then yes, this question has to be asked. But if you want, by and large, the private initiative to prosper and the government to take a back seat, then probably this is also the consequence that you have to face, that the social development and the rate of social development will be somewhat less because the economic development takes a front seat and it drives the whole thing. That's the logic.
With the permission of the chair, I would like to supplement. I'm RS Common from Punjab. I would like to supplement that I raised the question earlier. Is it the poor performance, relatively speaking, on health and education sector? Is it for lack of poor affordability to good quality education and quality health services, whatever may be the reasons? And is it because of poor affordability and poor access to quality education services, whatever may be the source? Probably, and supplement to it is, what is government contributing to education and health sector from its budget? Please elaborate. Thank you.
Okay. Just give me, a quick response. I had already mentioned that about 66% of the total expenditures are on the developmental expenditures. And again, a large part of that is on the social sectors. That means that of late, the government has already.
What is budgetary allocation to education? What is budgetary allocation to health? I would like to know that.
I appreciate your question.
66% is okay. I agree with you. As a development economist, I agree with that. But what exactly is going to the education and what exactly is going to the health sector? That makes a difference.
Correct. I agree. But in terms of total expenditure going to education and proportion of total education going to health, I can tell you for sure that it is above average as far as all states are concerned. It is certainly not below average. However, if you ask me, it could be more. It could be more. I don't have the figures right at this juncture for the specific question that you are asking.
When it is more, when it's, I go by your hunch. When it is more, why we are performing on health and education front? That's the question. And Professor Parekh rightly raised, well-performing state is why it is lacking on health and education, which is the future. You agree?
Ravi, can I contribute something to this?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. One other point that comes to my mind is that in spite of providing a larger budget, in spite of providing infrastructure, and this has also worried me and bothered me time and again. And one question that I've not been able to answer is that, Gujarat is a state which has got about 28% of backward tribes, that is scheduled tribes and scheduled, OBCs and others. Now, they are located in the hilly area on the eastern belt and some other areas. And there are social factors that do not allow, the normal functioning of the state in some of these areas at the same speed as some of the other areas. And there was some research done, I think, at the Sardar Patel Institute of Economic Development, where they said that in spite of spending money, the outcomes of these do not get translated into benefits, because the absorption of these investments and the facilities do not take place at the same level as the other population because of tribal areas and tribal instincts. I somehow felt that this is also an area that we need to look at in order to come to some conclusion on this matter. But I am a novice in the social development sector. If anyone else wants to comment.
Can I make a point?
But the factor you have raised, Himachal has better hilly area, larger hilly area, and better performance in health and education.
In my opinion, in education sector, despite especially in primary and secondary education, one major reason why Gujarat hasn't been able to do so well is because the chief minister or the political leaders, including Mr. Modi, have not spent political capital in working on the teachers' union. The teachers' unions in Gujarat are so powerful. And although Mr. Modi and other chief ministers tried many reforms, tried to dynamize the primary and secondary education system, almost all those things have been frustrated by the teachers' unions, who have actually resisted any change in the working of schools. So if the same amount of capital that was spent on, say, agricultural reform had been applied to education reform, or education reform in primary and secondary education, probably Gujarat would have performed much better with the kind of resources that it is devoted. If Gujarat, for example, had taken the strategy of the Asian tigers, that first build public public systems in health and education, and then let the private sector take care of economic growth, you would probably have had a much better development outcome overall than we have had now. So I think all the money has been thrown at education and health. Not enough administrative acumen has been brought to bear on improving the working of the public systems in this two spheres, and that's why the return on capital has been very low in this public system. In higher education, I think Gujarat is doing quite well because the private sector is very dominant. But in primary and secondary education, which is actually the bedrock of the education system, there the reform has been far slower than in many other states.
But Ranjit, I accept that, there is no satisfactory answer straight away. As far as the of the question, particularly in terms of the current flow indicators like the enrollment ratios and the dropout rates, I think they are improving. No doubt about that. They are improving considerably over as compared to past, but nowhere in the top 5 or top 6 kind of states, which Gujarat belongs to. I mean, apart from the education, as I'm saying, basically education. In terms of health, also our indicators have improved considerably, and now we are comparable. But in terms of the education, somehow we are lagging behind.
Especially in learning outcomes. For example, ACER report shows Gujarat to be at the bottom.
In economics, for instance, when we are unable to explain anything, we shift the whole blame on the observed, unexplained kind of the variables, like, say, what is the culture of the people?
President
I'm not
Dholakia,
too sure.
President Dholakia, sorry.
I would not like to venture into
I have a curiosity to know what is Gujarat model. I have been there for 6 years on Gujarat, Central University of Gujarat, as a member of Academic Council, member of EC. I have been asking everybody there, but what is Gujarat model? Would you kindly elaborate on that?
Gujarat culture, and the is that every third person that you meet, road or anywhere, okay, will talk about how to create employment rather than seek employment. It's a business orientation. Sir, nobody is interested because, people are considering the opportunity cost. And the opportunity cost turns out to be very short-sighted in these matters. Because, the longer term advantages of the higher education and better education is very difficult to be perceived at this juncture. People are still talking about this thing. So if you are talking to me about Gujarat culture, I would say every third person that you talk to is interested in creating employment rather than getting employed by a secured government job or anything. Nobody talks about government jobs, sir. That is
but Gujarat model has been highly boasted model by the political leadership of the day and on the day. When everybody is creating generating employment, what is the role of government in that Gujarat model?
Government's role is to create enabling environment rather than hand holding and giving the direct subsidies and direct benefits. It is not a question of that. It is a question of supporting in terms of enabling the to flourish. I think that is what I was also talking about in my presentation, that at the end of the day, I mean, you find that certain policies, like say, for instance, opening up of the port policies, okay? Similarly, talking about economic reforms, allowing people okay, to come up with the industries, as Sunil was talking and referring to, as Tushar was talking about in agriculture. I think everywhere you find the same story, that the growth has picked up because of the enabling environment. What government has done is to provide infrastructure. And that has been used absolutely very well by the private initiative. And that has spurred the thing. Obviously, the private initiative will not get into the situation where the returns are very long term and not necessarily for the same generation. I think that is the problem. So that
Thank
is
you.
where
Thank you.
the government
sir.
has to intervene. Yes. Charan, I think we are through.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions in the chat box. If any one of you wants to take it, and Dr. Dinesh Kapadia has raised his hand. Professor Dholakia, would you like to take those questions or?
Yeah, what are the questions? Just because, both of us, I mean, the other two members can also respond. Yeah. Dinesh.
Dr. Dinesh?
Yeah, I'm very much here. Am I audible? Am I?
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
Yeah, so I don't have any question, but just for the sake of value addition to what you have already said, that Gujarat is the state which has been releasing gender budget statement for the last 10 years. Secondly, Gujarat is the state where women empowerment is the focused area, and our women helpline 181, which is universal women helpline, to resolve issues of women in grievance. Telangana government made it a point when I was Director Gender Resource Center Government of Gujarat and Joint Secretary to Government to send CS officer to see our Mahila Sahayata Kendra, police station based support center also. So my only submission is these aspects should also have been added to what you have said. That is part of just value addition. It is my humble suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you. That is a very important thing. And in these days, you can't afford to miss it. Thank you for bringing it in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, sir. I'm from Punjab. Sir, I would also like to intervene, sir. Sir,
Please.
can I? May I, sir? Sir,
Go ahead.
sir, I find all the three presentation like a very ultra rosy picture about Punjab. Sir, about Gujarat. Sir, when I see the case of inequalities, the share of daily wages in Gujarat, it is below from the national average. National average, the rural wage rate is 315, but in Gujarat, it is below than the national average. I have also mentioned in the comment. And as you are saying that terms of trade is in favor of agriculture sector in Gujarat, then how the rural wage rate, it is below from the even national average. And similarly, the case of HDI, we see that HDI, in case of HDI, Gujarat is far below as compared to other states. These are also some burning issues we will have to tackle. Like things are not always in black and white. As being when we have to analyze any economy. Thank you, sir.
Professor Dholakia,
Hey,
can we?
Tushar, would you like to say something about the agricultural wage?
No, actually, I have not paid much attention to that. I haven't done any. But I've heard this too, that although Gujarat's agricultural economy has done very well, the agricultural wage rates are quite low, really lower compared to many other states.
So, but is it a matter of concern? Because at the end of the day, wage rate is a concept with time.
Mhm.
And I think, say for instance, if I am earning 10,000 rupees per day, but I get to earn 10,000 rupees a day only for 50 days. Versus when my rate is only say 8,000 rupees, but I I get to earn something like 100 days. Should I be concerned about that, or should I I should also be paid 10,000 and get the work only for 50 days? I mean, I don't know. As an economist, I would say that the second one is better.
I haven't
8,000 for
studied.
100 days.
Yeah. No, I absolutely. If that is the situation, then the second one is better. But I haven't studied this, so I don't want to make
Correct.
an
I have
uninformed
also not studied it, but what I'm saying is it a matter of concern? That's all.
Professor Dholakia, one thought which both Professor Ghuman and there is somebody here, Vashaspati Shukla. Vashaspati Shukla is asking on education in terms of graduates. In terms of graduates.
Graduate, okay.
Do you want to take that question, or you think it's
I
okay?
think we have responded to that thing in a broader way. I think.
Okay. All right. So I think then should we close?
Yeah, I think Jaskaran Singh is what we have said.
No, he has already asked the question.
Okay.
He's made that point on HDI, so that is okay. All right. So can we then close, Professor Dholakia? You want to make any closing observations?
Yeah, my closing observations are that probably the purpose of this webinar was to learn that what explains a better than average performance of economy, because Gujarat is among the very well performing economies in the state, in the country. The purpose was not really to get into why certain sectors are still not picking up, or why there are still certain kind of weaknesses. We all are aware about these weaknesses, and we know that there are the weaknesses, but if we focus on those aspects, probably we would have missed the purpose of this seminar to emphasize why is Gujarat performing better. I think if anybody wants to say that Gujarat is performing better because we are weak in other things, that is a different issue. But I think nobody is talking in those lines that the weaknesses are the strengths in a way. Nobody talks like that. We all recognize and we all emphasize that weaknesses are to be addressed, but that is for future. That is for the next step. I think Gujarat is still going to grow and is definitely likely to grow more than in the past. And we hope that we will address some of these issues as we go down the line. The purpose was to really get into why Gujarat is performing better. And my one-line answer is that is because the state has taken an enabling role, and because the private initiative in Gujarat has always the forefront. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dholakia. That's exactly how I wanted to conclude, because the series that we have is trying to learn from each other what are the pluses and what are the negatives. Now, the pluses that have been mentioned today, a friendly industrial policy and starting it in time, a friendly agriculture policy with balancing between the arid, semi-arid and well rain-fed areas, trying to see what best can be done and trying to balance out, looking at the cropping pattern, all these issues that the government needs to provide support. We are certainly not America. We are yet not Europe or London. Each one of us are learning from each other. We are not even Kerala. And we are going to have a presentation on Kerala on November 1. They may have very good socioeconomic indicators, but then they have no industrialization. And they are not making it in any way into agriculture in a big way. So there is so much to learn from each other and highlight the positives that have worked for one, and also look at the negatives which have negated the enterprising or entrepreneurial power of some people in another state. Each state in our country has strength, and each state has weaknesses, some natural, some for demographic reasons, and some for, of course, critical paralysis. So I think the whole objective of this exercise is to highlight and learn. And in that context, Professor Dholakia, I want to thank you for providing that leadership, thought leadership in taking up this issue and introducing us to your two colleagues, Professor Parekh and also Professor Shah. I want to thank each one of you. I want to also thank the participants who brought in issues that were able to highlight the concerns and also highlight some of the hidden thoughts which probably would not come out in a normal discussion. Next week, by the way, this presentation will be available to you tomorrow by noon, as all the others are, except Haryana, which we will release after the elections. This will be available by noon. I would welcome you to share with others because it gives a very good picture of Gujarat and the synergy which the government and the people bring it together to go to higher growth path. Next week, we have, I think, another excellent presentation on inflation targeting. On inflation targeting, as you know, the country has an inflation target. Many of us are of the view that this needs to be revisited, either the target or the target regime. There are so many views amongst economists in the country. Should we have a flexible inflation target? Should we have a higher inflation target? Should we have a pause on the inflation target? Countries which are in the growing stage, do they have an inflation target? An emerging country like ours? So many thoughts are there in our minds. And next week, we are going to have experts. Professor Dholakia will once again chair that session, but we will have experts from the academia and the central bank to talk to us on inflation targeting. I would request each one of you to please join us, take the benefit of that discussion and contribute in that discussion because that is so timely and so contemporary. With that, let me once again conclude. I want to thank each one of you. I wish you a great weekend and I look forward to be with you next Friday, 4 to 5:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil, and
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.